You're listening to an exclusive production from Valio, From Bankruptcy to Phoenix, The Rebirth of Power Through Money. Chapter 1. Hitting Rock Bottom. Awareness before rebirth. Every true transformation begins not with a soft landing, but with a stark, uncompromising moment of reckoning. It's the point where the carefully constructed illusion of financial stability finally shatters, leaving you standing exposed on the cold, hard ground of reality. For many, this moment arrives with the final, crushing weight of bankruptcy, the ultimate exposure of vulnerability. But before you can rise from any ashes, you must first fully, fearlessly, and deeply inhabit the fire that consumes what was. This is not a time for deflection or soft-pedaling the truth. The energy of true rebirth demands a full, unflinching descent into the emotional and financial depths of the crisis. Think of it as an excavation. You have to go down to the bedrock to understand the foundation that failed, and the only way out is through. What does it feel like, really, to be here? It's a piercing blend of shame, a white-hot resentment, and a profound, aching sense of loss. You might feel a paralyzing fear about the future, mixed with a bitter, internal rage at having lost control. Acknowledge the intensity of these emotions. They are not weaknesses. They are the raw, volatile fuel for your eventual resurrection. Suppressing them is like trying to build a fire with damp wood. You need the dry, concentrated heat of absolute truth. Bankruptcy is more than just a legal or financial status. It is a profound psychological wound. It violates your core sense of competence, power, and security. You invested your energy, your time, and perhaps your very identity into financial pursuits, only to see the structure collapse. The world often views this event as a failure of character, a mark of incompetence, and that judgment can be deeply internalized, twisting the knife further. The first and most powerful act of reclaiming control is to refuse that external narrative. Your worth is not determined by your account balance. Your power is not defined by a temporary setback. You are not the debt. You are the sovereign consciousness observing the debt. The initial phase is about confronting reality without the usual filters of denial or self-deception. Look at the numbers. Study the balance sheets, the debts, and the dwindling assets. Let the cold, brutal facts sink in. Where exactly did the systemic weakness lie? Was it reckless risk-taking, an overestimation of market conditions, or perhaps a blind spot about personal spending? This isn't an exercise in self-flagellation. It's a necessary strategic mapping. You cannot navigate out of a dark tunnel until you understand its precise shape and depth, and its dangers. Awareness in this context must be absolute. It's the unwavering gaze into the darkness, not the quick, fearful glance away. Many people, when faced with such an overwhelming loss, instinctively pull back, hoping the problem will somehow solve itself, or they become emotionally numb to cope. This is the surest path to remaining trapped in the cycle. True power lies in the willingness to feel the full sting of the loss. Let the awareness be sharp, potent, and utterly clear. This clarity is your first, most essential tool for rebirth because it instantly gives you an accurate bearing. Consider the metaphor of the warrior who is disarmed. At first, there is panic, the instinct to scramble and retreat. But the experienced warrior knows that being stripped of external tools forces a reliance on internal, fundamental strength. Bankruptcy strips away the external armor of credit, assets, and reputation. It leaves you exposed, yes, but also free from the false security, those things often provided. The real work, the work of building an unstoppable foundation, begins right here in this exposed, raw state. You are being forced to recognize that your true wealth resides not in what you have, but in what you are and what you know. The core of this awareness must be rooted in personal accountability. This is a powerful, often misunderstood concept. Accountability is not blame. Blame is outward directed, seeking a scapegoat, the economy, a business partner, or bad luck. Blame is weak. It gives away your power. Accountability is inward directed. It is the deep realization that you were the ultimate locus of control for your decisions and actions. Even if external forces played a role, you chose the response, the investment, the belief system, and the counsel that led to this point. Taking fierce, absolute ownership of the situation, past and present, is the single most important pivot toward future power. When you take full accountability, you instantly reclaim your power. As long as you attribute your downfall to outside forces, you remain a victim, subject to the whims of the world. The moment you declare, "I own this collapse," you simultaneously declare, "and therefore I own the resurrection." This is the psychological lever that begins to shift the mountainous weight of the situation. It converts a passive disaster into an active challenge. This declaration, spoken internally with unflinching resolve, marks the true beginning of your comeback. To facilitate this deep dive, begin to meticulously document the journey. This documentation should be both financial and psychological. Write down the specifics of the financial devastation. How much is owed? To whom? What decisions in hindsight were the most detrimental? Be cold, clinical, and precise in this financial autopsy. But then go deeper. Write about the emotional landscape. What is the single, most uncomfortable truth this experience has forced you to face about yourself? It might be a hidden pattern of avoidance, a tendency to gamble with security, or a deep-seated fear of true, substantive wealth and responsibility. These are the shadows that must be brought into the light. Only when you identify the precise fault line within your own mindset can you begin to fill it with solid, sustainable material. The goal is to move past the initial shock and into a state of controlled, strategic awareness. You are gathering intelligence on your own weaknesses. You are cataloging the damage not to mourn it, but to plot the rebuild. This requires a disciplined, almost cold-blooded approach to your own history. Review the past as if you were an external auditor, dissecting the failure with a detached, analytical precision. You are seeking patterns, not guilt. You are looking for leverage points, not excuses. Many attempts at recovery fail because they try to skip this crucial, painful stage. They rush to create a new budget or start a new venture, but they haven't purged the poison of the old patterns. They haven't excavated the limiting beliefs that caused the first collapse. They treat the symptoms, the debt, without curing the root cause, the flawed decision-making process. You must become intimate with the precise mechanics of your downfall. You must understand the emotional triggers that led you to make unsustainable choices. Only when the roots are fully exposed can you be sure the ground is clear for the powerful, new growth that awaits. This process of hitting rock bottom, of achieving a searing awareness, is not a punishment. It is an initiation. You are being forced by circumstance to shed the superficial and encounter the essential. You are finding out who you are when all the external symbols of success are stripped away. What remains is the core of your resolve, your intrinsic capability, and your fierce will to not just survive, but to profoundly overcome. Cherish this moment of raw, unvarnished truth. It is the crucible where true financial and psychological power is forged. The deeper the foundation you lay in this state of absolute awareness, the taller and stronger your next financial empire will be. You must resist the urge to numb the pain. The pain is information. It is telling you exactly where the weaknesses are, where your boundaries must be drawn, and where your focus must be relentlessly applied. Think of yourself as a master architect forced to demolish a faulty structure. You do not mourn the wreckage, you study the blueprints of the failure. You ask the hard questions. Was the stress load too great? Were the materials substandard? Was the design fundamentally unsound? This level of scrutiny, applied to your own financial history, prevents the inevitable second collapse. It's the difference between a temporary fix and a permanent, sovereign rebuild. The power of this awareness also extends to recognizing the financial system's role without externalizing blame. Yes, the market is complex, and unexpected events occur. But the truly resilient individual understands that they must build a personal fortress robust enough to withstand the expected and the unexpected volatility. Your goal is not to be lucky in a stable world, but to be unstoppable in a chaotic one. Awareness means accepting the world as it is, full of risks and uncertainty, and designing your life to thrive within those very parameters. Finally, this stage demands an end to the secret shame. Financial collapse thrives in silence and isolation. You must break the seal of secrecy. Choose one trusted person, a friend, a mentor, or a professional advisor, and articulate the situation fully, speaking the truth aloud, without minimizing or exaggerating, solidifies your own awareness and begins the process of external validation and support. This is not about seeking pity. It is about establishing a base camp with trusted allies for the climb ahead. True strength is knowing when to stand alone and when to bring in the strategic support required for the mission. The awareness of loss is the bedrock upon which genuine power is rebuilt. Do not run from the pain, the shame, or the reality of the situation. Instead, turn to face it and let its intensity sharpen your focus. Understand that you are not defining yourself by the collapse, but by the fierce, sovereign willingness to look directly at the truth and begin the arduous, yet ultimately empowering, work of resurrection. You have confronted the abyss. Now, let that intense realization become the unwavering light that guides your climb back. The ascent begins when you choose to see everything, and fear nothing that you see. You have the truth, you have the power. Chapter 2, The Fire of Failure, Embracing Pain as a Catalyst. You have stood at the edge of the collapse. You have looked into the financial abyss and named the truth. That unwavering gaze into reality is an act of profound courage, but it is only the first step. The next phase requires a different kind of strength, the courage to embrace the fire. Failure burns. There is no gentler way to describe the experience of losing control, losing assets, and losing the sense of stability you once had. That pain is not something to be managed or minimized. It is something to be respected, understood, and ultimately harnessed. Many people spend their entire lives trying to insulate themselves from this kind of profound discomfort, believing that the absence of pain equals success. But the deep truth is that the greatest breakthroughs in power, wisdom, and financial strategy are forged in the very heat of acute distress. This chapter is about perception. It is about learning to perceive your setback, your bankruptcy, not as a tombstone marking the end of your financial life, but as a forge, a place of transformation where the brittle metal of your old beliefs is melted down and recast into something unbreakable. The heat you feel right now is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to purify you. Think of the emotional intensity you are experiencing, the sharp regret, the frustration, the stinging sense of injustice, or the self-directed anger. This is raw, potent energy. Most people instinctively push this energy away, viewing it as toxic. They try to numb it with distractions, or they let it consume them in despair. But the path to resurrection demands that you do the opposite. You must channel that intensity. The fire of failure forces two critical shifts in your perspective. First, it illuminates. Before the collapse, many of your assumptions were merely untested theories. You assumed certain risks were acceptable. You assumed certain strategies were sound. You assumed your market position was secure. Failure rips away these comfortable assumptions and exposes the naked truth of what works and what absolutely does not. This loss carries the seeds of profound wisdom, but you must be willing to dig for them among the ashes. What did this experience teach you about the absolute necessity of reserves? What did it teach you about the character of those you chose as partners or advisors? What did it reveal about your own propensity for risk versus security? These are priceless lessons, paid for at the highest possible price. Second, it forges. The heat of the crisis hardens your resolve. The person who has never faced a true existential financial threat often operates with a degree of softness, a cushion against consequence. Once that cushion is gone, replaced by the immediate, undeniable necessity of survival, a new kind of resilience is born. This is the difference between academic knowledge and battlefield expertise. You now possess a visceral, embodied understanding of what true financial pressure feels like, and that knowledge makes you strategically stronger, more discerning, and utterly determined not to return to that exposed place. Embracing the pain as a catalyst means consciously reframing the setback from a punitive event to a strategic opportunity. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is a brutal, necessary step on the path to becoming truly unstoppable. You now have information that those who have only known linear success lack. They are relying on a system that, for you, has already proven it can break. You know where the cracks are, and that insight is the very foundation of your future strategic advantage. To make this transformation, you must engage in a process of radical extraction. This means looking at every single element of the failure, every lost asset, every defaulted payment, every moment of professional humiliation, and asking a single ruthless question: what strategic insight is embedded here? For example, perhaps the bankruptcy stemmed from an over-reliance on a single, volatile revenue stream. The embedded insight is: absolute diversification is non-negotiable for long-term power. Perhaps it was caused by neglecting the detailed, mundane work of financial modeling for the thrill of the big deal. The embedded insight is: discipline in the small things prevents disaster in the large ones. You must approach your own history like an intelligence agent dissecting a captured enemy's plans. Emotionalize the event just long enough to feel the weight of the consequence, and then immediately switch to a cold, analytical posture to harvest the wisdom. The emotion fuels the urgency. The intellect executes the analysis. The synthesis of this potent emotional drive and clear, calculated thought is what creates true, lasting strategic insight. Allow the pain to be a boundary marker. It defines, with piercing clarity, the territory you will never allow yourself to revisit. The memory of the acute difficulty becomes a fiercely protective internal mechanism. Whenever a potential new venture or decision carries the echo of the past mistakes, that internal scar tissue will flare up, acting as an unignorable warning system. The person who has paid the ultimate price for a mistake possesses a clarity of judgment that the comfortable cannot access. This realization is key to transforming your internal narrative. Stop thinking, "I am a failure because I experienced bankruptcy." Start thinking, "I am a survivor who gained unrivaled operational wisdom through the experience of bankruptcy." This isn't just wordplay, it's a fundamental shift. In the locus of your personal power, you are converting a past liability into a future asset, the asset of hard-won knowledge. The path to resurrection requires a deliberate rejection of victimhood. Victimhood keeps you passive, waiting for external circumstances or a savior to pull you out. The energy of the phoenix, the true energy of rebirth, is active and aggressive. It demands that you seize control of your own narrative, your own learning, and your own timeline for recovery. This means moving past the question of why this happened to me and shifting to the far more powerful question: what is the most powerful thing I can do with this information right now? Failure also has a critical role in testing the quality of your internal structure. When everything is going well, you don't know the depth of your character. It's easy to be optimistic when the accounts are healthy. The true test of your material, your discipline, your focus, your integrity, comes when the pressure is maximized. Did you crumble completely, or did a core of fierce, unyielding self-respect remain intact? That remaining core is the material you must now build upon. It is the unburnable part of you. Understand that the process of recovery is not about getting back to where you were. That is a weak ambition. The goal is to use the energy of the collapse to launch yourself to a fundamentally higher plane of power and resilience. You are not aiming for recovery. You are aiming for sovereign supremacy over your financial life. The previous structure failed because it had inherent vulnerabilities. The new structure must be designed to be impervious to those same weaknesses. Therefore, embrace the discomfort of analyzing the failure. Let the memory of the struggle fuel an intense, almost obsessive focus on strategic correction. When you feel the weight of regret, convert that energy into a disciplined planning session. When you feel the heat of shame, channel that energy into meticulous system creation. Your pain is now your engine, driving you toward a state of wisdom and competence that few ever achieve without going through this trial by fire. The true gift of failure is that it provides a blank slate. All the weak commitments, the unsustainable habits, and the flawed assumptions have been stripped away. You now have the terrifying, yet exhilarating, freedom to build from absolute zero, armed with the undeniable wisdom gained from the wreckage. Your challenge is not to avoid the memory of the fire, but to carry the flame, the intense, corrective energy of that experience, with you, using it to illuminate every single decision you make from this day forward. Let the pain be your most demanding, most effective mentor. The fire of failure burns away all that is weak and non-essential, leaving behind only the pure metal of wisdom and resolve. Do not fear the heat. Embrace it as the necessary forge for your rebirth. Channel the fierce intensity of your loss into calculated, strategic insight. You have paid the highest price for knowledge. Now, wield that knowledge with the unstoppable focus of a survivor who knows the cost of every mistake. The pain is not a permanent state. It is a temporary, powerful catalyst that is now hardening your character and clarifying your path to genuine, unwavering power. Chapter 3. The Ashes of Limitation. Recognizing what must be left behind. You have confronted the reality of the loss, and you have begun to harness the fierce energy of failure. Now, you stand amidst the ashes of the collapse. This is a powerful, sacred space, for here, in the stillness after the fire, is where true discernment begins. The fire has consumed what was weak and unsustainable, leaving behind only the residue of what no longer serves you. Your task now is to sift through those ashes and recognize the insidious limitations, the patterns, habits, and beliefs that paved the way to financial ruin. Bankruptcy is not merely an external event. It is an ultimate diagnostic tool. It exposes with brutal clarity the fundamental flaws in your internal operating system. You might have blamed the market, or luck, or others, but the ashes reveal the truth. The failure was rooted in choices driven by limiting narratives and flawed assumptions you unconsciously carried. To rise as a phoenix, you must be willing to let go of the very things that grounded you in the past. This requires a deep dive into self-excavation. We are talking about beliefs that are so ingrained they felt like facts. Think about the hidden contracts you made with yourself about money. Did you believe, deep down, that you had to take unsustainable risks to deserve great wealth? Did you carry a subconscious belief that money was inherently corrupt, leading you to subtly sabotage large-scale success? Was there a core narrative that you were inherently incapable of managing complex wealth, despite your ambition? These psychological frameworks, however subtle, generate the habits that inevitably lead to systemic failure. Consider the habits that became liabilities. Perhaps it was a pattern of avoiding difficult conversations about finances, leading to deferred problems and exponential growth of debt. Maybe it was an emotional dependency on instant gratification, where the thrill of spending outweighed the long-term discipline of investing. Or perhaps it was a persistent overestimation of your own resources, driven by ego rather than sober calculation. These behaviors are the symptoms. The limiting belief is the underlying virus. You must now isolate and eliminate that virus. To begin the process of clearing the space, you need to conduct a relentless audit of your own behaviors. Write down the exact, repeated actions that cost you dearly. Do not simply list over-leveraging. Dig deeper. What impulse led to the over-leveraging? Was it a fear of missing out, a need to appear successful to peers, or a deep-seated distrust in the slow, consistent accumulation of wealth? When you find the recurring, self-destructive action, you must follow the thread back to the core belief. That narrative about money, power, or self-worth is what must be left behind. Releasing these limitations is an act of courageous internal surgery. It is often harder to let go of an old identity, the identity of the high roller, the risk taker, or the overly generous provider, than it is to let go of the actual assets. These identities are comforting, even when they are self-destructive, because they are familiar. But the person you were cannot be the person who achieves lasting, unshakable financial sovereignty. That previous self contained the vulnerabilities that led to this point. You must consciously mourn the loss of the old self, and then deliberately shed it. Think of limitation as friction. Every single limiting belief or poor habit creates drag, slowing your movement toward true power and making any success unsustainable. The goal now is to reach a state of unfettered flow, where your actions are aligned with strategic intention, not emotional impulse or old programming. This means letting go of the need for external validation that drove poor decisions, releasing the attachment to the identity of the victim that seeks external rescue, and finally, discarding the belief that complex financial management is beyond your capability. This stage is defined by ruthless editing. You are editing the story of your life and your relationship with money. First, edit the narrative. Replace "I am bad with money" with "I am a powerful learner who is mastering financial strategy." Replace "It's impossible to rebuild from this" with "This clean slate is my greatest advantage for building an unstoppable, bespoke financial future." Your internal language must become a language of sovereignty and strategic potential. Second, edit the associations. Bankruptcy often exposes weaknesses in the relationships and environments you maintained. Were you surrounded by people who encouraged or validated your unsustainable spending or risky decisions? Did you operate in environments where high-stakes gambling was mistaken for brilliant strategy? The ashes demand that you recognize these toxic associations for what they were. Further limitations. You must create immediate, clean distance from people, places, and habits that do not align with your vision of disciplined, strategic wealth building. Your inner circle and your external environment must become uncompromising fortresses of focus and positive accountability. Third, edit the emotional baggage. The fear of repeating the failure is perhaps the heaviest chain the ashes leave behind. This fear can be paralyzing, leading to excessive timidity and a refusal to take any calculated risk. You must distinguish between the lessons, prudence, due diligence, diversification, and the paralysis, a complete emotional shutdown. The lesson must be internalized as wisdom. The paralysis must be recognized as a limitation to be released. Your experience has given you unparalleled insight. Do not allow fear to convert that hard-won knowledge into a crippling disadvantage. You paid for the lesson. Now, you must wield the power that comes with knowing the terrain. Recognizing what must be left behind is an active, ongoing process, not a one-time event. Every time you face a new financial decision, pause and ask, is this decision rooted in a new strategic awareness, or is it an echo of the old limiting self? If it is an echo, a desire for quick gain, a lack of deep due diligence, or an avoidance of hard details, you must deliberately choose the path of the phoenix, the path of methodical, disciplined, and fiercely self-aware action. The ashes of limitation are a gift if you view them correctly. They are the undeniable proof of what not to do, illuminated by the high cost of the mistake. Use this clarity as the blueprint for your new psychological and financial architecture. Clear the space entirely. Do not leave a single piece of debris from the old, flawed structure. Only then can you begin to lay the foundation for a life of unshakable resilience and sovereign control. The clean slate is waiting for your new, intentional design. The ashes are the final remnants of a life structure that could not sustain true power. Do not mourn them, but use them as a tool for uncompromising clarity. Sift through the residue of your loss. Identify every limiting belief, every weak habit, and every destructive narrative, and deliberately, powerfully release them. You are shedding the skin of your former, weaker self. This act of purification creates the vast, clear space required for new financial strategies and the rebirth of true personal empowerment. You are now free to build a life based on potent self-knowledge, unburdened by the ghosts of the past. Chapter 4. Rising Awareness, Discovering Hidden Opportunities in Crisis. You have performed the arduous internal work. You face the truth, you harness the emotional fire, and you purge the ashes of limiting beliefs. Now, with your psychological space clear, and your vision sharpened by failure, you are ready for a crucial, paradoxical shift. You must move from analyzing the loss to discovering the opportunities that are always, without fail, hidden within the structure of any profound crisis. The popular narrative holds that financial ruin leaves nothing but emptiness. This is fundamentally untrue. Catastrophic loss, when approached with a disciplined, penetrating awareness, actually creates a set of unique and powerful advantages that are unavailable to those operating in perpetual security. Your challenge now is to recognize these advantages, the hidden paths, overlooked possibilities, and untapped resources, and wield them with strategic intensity. The first and most profound opportunity in crisis is the leverage of zero. When you have lost everything, the fear of losing something more loses its power. This means your risk tolerance, paradoxically, becomes much higher on a psychological level. The person clinging to comfort and minimal assets is often paralyzed by the fear of a small setback. You, having survived the maximum setback, are liberated. You know that even the worst-case scenario is survivable because you have already lived through it. This psychological freedom allows for an unconstrained, aggressive strategic clarity. You can now pursue bold, calculated moves that a more risk-averse person would dismiss. This is not recklessness. It is a leveraged position based on deep, hard-won self-knowledge. You have nothing to lose but the opportunity for gain. The second hidden opportunity is the clarity of necessity. Before bankruptcy, your options were likely overwhelming. You could have pursued 1,000 different paths, and that diffused energy led to scattered efforts. Crisis collapses the field of possibilities into a tight, focused beam. Necessity dictates your priorities with brutal efficiency. You no longer have the luxury of pursuing vanity projects or ill-defined ambitions. You must focus on strategies that generate immediate, predictable, and sustainable value. This forced concentration of effort, a relentless focus on what must be done to rebuild, is an enormous competitive advantage. It cuts through complexity and forces you into pure, decisive action. What core skill do you possess that the market desperately needs right now? That is where your energy must be channeled. The third opportunity is the unlocked asset of time. Financial collapse often involves the loss of large, complex, and time-consuming assets, businesses, properties, or high-maintenance lifestyles. These things, while symbols of success, often become profound drains on your most valuable non-renewable resource, time. With those obligations stripped away, you gain an unprecedented amount of unencumbered intellectual and temporal capacity. You are now free to dedicate every available hour to mastery, learning, and strategic rebuilding, unburdened by the maintenance of a failing structure or the demands of a high-cost life. Treat this time as the most precious commodity you possess and invest it ruthlessly in your education, skill development, and networking. To actively discover these hidden opportunities, you must engage in an exercise of strategic reframing. 1. Inventory your hidden capital. Beyond cash and hard assets, what capital remains? Your network, who respects your resilience and will back your next venture. Your experience, what are the 3 most valuable niche skills you gained from the collapse itself? And your character, your demonstrated ability to survive and fight. These are intangible assets that are often more valuable than liquid cash for starting anew. The person who has endured great loss often attracts support from those who admire true metal. 2. Identify market gaps. Because you have been on the sharp end of the financial system's failures, you now possess a unique, invaluable perspective on what the system lacks. Did you desperately need a specific type of debt consolidation service, a particular kind of transparent financial reporting, or a niche product that could have saved your business? The problems you faced are problems others are currently facing. Your failure has given you the market intelligence necessary to create the solution. Your pain points are now your product development roadmap. 3. Utilize the fresh start advantage. In many legal structures, bankruptcy provides a formal, legal resetting of certain debt obligations. This is a cold, hard advantage. While morally demanding full repayment is often a long-term goal for the sovereign individual, the immediate legal relief allows you to direct all future generated revenue into building new, protected assets rather than servicing old, compounding debt. This clean runway is an opportunity for hyper-accelerated growth, provided you are absolutely disciplined in your new financial habits. This entire phase requires you to maintain a state of active penetration. You are not passively waiting for opportunities to arrive. You are aggressively seeking them out by applying the unique lens of a survivor. Every meeting, every piece of news, and every personal challenge must be filtered through the question, where is the leverage here? For instance, when networking, don't talk about the failure as a tragedy. Frame it as an MBA in extremis. You are not a cautionary tale. You are a battle-tested strategist. Use your story of survival as proof of your tenacity, not your weakness. People invest in resilience, not comfort. Furthermore, this stage provides the critical opportunity to build a bespoke financial architecture, one perfectly tailored to your newfound wisdom. Before the crisis, you were likely operating within a template, a mortgage, standard investment, or business model that had inherent, unseen vulnerabilities. Now you can design a system from the ground up that prioritizes insulation, resilience, and sovereign control. This new system will not seek the path of least resistance, but the path of maximum structural integrity. You build for immortality, not temporary gain. Embrace the understanding that while the assets you lost were finite, the resilience and ingenuity you gained are infinite resources. You have been through the fire and emerged with an almost supernatural clarity. Do not let the memory of the collapse paralyze you. Instead, let the insights gained from it become the single most powerful, proprietary advantage in your possession. Even in financial ruin, the seeds of unstoppable growth are present, waiting for the light of your disciplined awareness. The collapse has given you the leverage of zero, the clarity of necessity, and the precious asset of time. Do not look at the empty space as a void. See it as the boundless potential of a clean slate. Wield your hard-won experience as your greatest capital, actively seeking the hidden pathways that only a survivor can see. The sovereign individual converts crisis not just into survival, but into a launchpad for unparalleled, resilient power. Chapter 5. Reclaiming Power. Taking control over finances and mindset. You have established an unflinching awareness of your past. You've transmuted the pain of failure into strategic insight, and you've identified the powerful opportunities inherent in your clean slate. Now, the time for analysis is over, and the phase of decisive action must begin. This is the moment to seize back the reins of your financial life and your mindset, a process of consciously reclaiming your sovereign power from the chaos of the collapse. Recovery is not a passive waiting game. It is an aggressive act of re-establishing autonomy. When bankruptcy strikes, it feels like control is ripped away, by creditors, by legal systems, by debt. The deep psychological work now is to reverse that feeling of helplessness by implementing systems and habits that are entirely under your command. This chapter is about moving from being a victim of circumstance to being the architect of your destiny. The first, and most critical, step in reclaiming power is to establish immediate, ironclad boundaries around your financial present. You must stop the bleeding absolutely and instantly. This means creating a zero-tolerance environment for the old, destructive habits. You are designing a new financial operating system, and the first rule is containment. Your current financial reality must be mapped out with military precision. You need to know exactly how much cash flow is required for absolute essentials and precisely how much you can generate. This is not about approximation. It's about uncompromising data integrity. Every single dollar in and every single dollar out must be tracked and accounted for. This discipline is not punitive. It is the ultimate act of self-respect, demonstrating to yourself that you are fully engaged and in charge of every detail. Restoring internal trust through action, the deepest loss following financial failure, is often the loss of trust in oneself. Your own judgment was the instrument that led to the collapse, and that betrayal of self-trust is crippling. You cannot sustain a successful comeback if you doubt your own capacity for good decision-making. The way to rebuild this trust is not through positive affirmations alone. It is through small, repeatable victories built on an unwavering commitment to integrity and discipline. Start with the simplest systems and execute them perfectly. Commit to 3 non-negotiable financial rules such as 1. Track every single expense immediately. 2. Never spend more than 80% of your weekly income. And 3. Review your finances every Sunday morning without fail. Executing these small, controlled actions flawlessly rebuilds the internal credibility you desperately need. Every week you adhere to these commitments, you send a powerful, undeniable message to your subconscious. I am reliable. My word is my bond. I am back in control. This meticulous attention to detail is the very essence of reclaiming power. The financial crisis was likely characterized by systemic sloppiness, by ignoring the small problems until they became insurmountable. True power resides in mastery over the minutiae. When you demonstrate that you can manage the smallest flows of cash with precision, you prove your capacity to manage vast amounts of wealth intelligently in the future. Strategic distancing from the past. Reclaiming power also requires decisive psychological and practical separation from the circumstances and people that contributed to the failure. This isn't about assigning blame. It's about clearing the battlefield for your rebuild. If there were old debts that are now legally resolved, focus all future emotional energy on the creation of new wealth, not the agonizing regret over the old obligations. This separation must also extend to your mindset. You must establish mental protocols that prevent you from repeating past mistakes. This involves a conscious adoption of a post-failure strategy. 1. Embrace prudence as a weapon. The old self may have viewed prudence as boring or weak. The new sovereign self understands that prudence is the most powerful shield against future volatility. You must become a master of reserves, creating insulating layers of cash and assets that make you impervious to typical market shocks. 2. Prioritize due diligence. The excitement of a quick deal or the pressure of a supposed can't-miss opportunity must now be countered with methodical, cold-blooded research and verification. Every significant financial decision must pass through a gauntlet of skepticism and factual analysis. The feeling of urgency is often the first sign of a vulnerability. Move slowly, decisively, and with absolute grounding in facts. 3. Institutionalize checks and balances. Because you know your own weaknesses better than anyone, you must now design systems that specifically compensate for them. If you tend toward impulsive spending, set up mandatory cooling-off periods for large purchases. If you dislike detailed accounting, hire a disciplined, neutral professional to handle that function and report directly to you. Power is not about doing everything yourself. It is about designing an infallible system that works for you. Cultivating the mentality of the victor, the mental landscape of recovery must be fiercely guarded. Your goal is to transform the internal feeling of struggle into a feeling of strategic engagement. Every challenge you face in the rebuilding phase is not a personal attack, but a strategic problem to be solved with ingenuity and detached precision. Practice radical self-reliance. Stop waiting for the perfect client, the perfect opportunity, or the perfect economic environment. The external world is a variable you cannot control. Your focus must be 100% on the internal variables, your effort, your skill development, and your strategic planning. This shift in focus is the ultimate reclamation of power, as it makes your success entirely dependent on your own will and effort. Finally, begin to establish new, intentional rituals that solidify your new identity. This could be a daily planning session where you visualize your fully realized, sovereign financial life, or a weekly review where you document your progress and acknowledge your small victories. These rituals anchor the mindset of the victor and prevent the toxic narratives of the past from reasserting themselves. You are consciously programming your future success. Reclaiming power demands decisive, uncompromising action rooted in self-knowledge and discipline. By establishing ironclad boundaries, restoring internal trust through perfect execution of small tasks, and institutionalizing systems that compensate for your vulnerabilities, you dismantle the feeling of powerlessness left by the collapse. Your financial freedom is not something to be granted. It is something you must fiercely take back, one intentional, methodical action at a time. Seize control now, and let your discipline become the visible, undeniable proof of your unstoppable will. Chapter 6. Transforming fear into focus, turning anxiety into strategic action. You've reclaimed control by implementing systems and rebuilding self-trust. Yet even as you execute your new strategy, a powerful dark energy will inevitably surface. Fear. Financial collapse often leaves a residue of anxiety, a low-level hum of dread about the future, a sharp, cold panic whenever you face a major decision. Most people attempt to suppress this fear, but the sovereign path demands a radical transformation, turning this emotional intensity into a clear, purposeful, and unstoppable strategic focus. Fear is simply energy. It is an internal alarm system, vibrating with immense power designed to command your attention. In its raw, unchanneled form, it paralyzes, causing indecision, avoidance, and a retreat into comfort. But when understood and redirected, that same intense energy becomes the single greatest accelerant for your growth and the most powerful tool for solidifying your comeback. The core of this transformation is recognizing that fear carries data. It is not a random emotion. It is a highly specific signal indicating a perceived threat or vulnerability. Your task is to become the impassionate interrogator of your own fear. When anxiety grips you, say, when considering a new investment or making a cold call, you must pause and ask, 1. What exactly is the fear telling me? Don't accept vague dread. Drill down. Is it the fear of losing the small reserve you've built? Is it the fear of external judgment? Is it the fear of discovering a deficiency in your own skills? Pinpoint the source. 2. Does this fear reflect a real, immediate, and unmitigated risk, or an old psychological wound? Often, the magnitude of the fear far outweighs the current strategic risk. The intense feeling is an echo of the past collapse, not an accurate reading of the present situation. Separate the fact of the current risk from the feeling of past trauma. 3. What specific, actionable information is required to neutralize this fear? If the fear is, I might lose this money because the venture is unstable, the action is clear. Rigorous due diligence, seeking expert counsel, and mitigating the risk with protective clauses. The emotional energy of the fear must be immediately funneled into these practical, strategic steps. The alchemy of emotional conversion to turn anxiety into strategic action. You must master the alchemy of emotional conversion. Every surge of panic, every sleepless night spent churning over worst-case scenarios must be consciously converted into a period of intense focus and execution. When the fear hits, do not distract yourself. Instead, use the urgency it creates to launch into a productive task. If you're afraid of running out of money, that fear is your signal to spend the next 2 hours generating new leads or refining your income streams. If you're afraid of failing a new project, use that nervous energy to meticulously over-prepare by studying the market, modeling the risks, and creating comprehensive contingency plans. This is the process of channeling intensity. The vast, unfocused energy of anxiety is like high-pressure steam. If not contained, it bursts. If contained and directed through a turbine, your disciplined work, it generates immense power. You are using the discomfort of the fear as a mandate for overperformance and strategic depth. Your fear is no longer a stop sign. It is a powerful accelerator pedal. Acceleration through decisive action. The most potent antidote to fear is accelerated, decisive action. Indecision allows fear to fester and grow. Every time you delay a necessary but frightening task, making a hard budget cut, firing a non-performing partner, or presenting a bold new plan, the fear matrix in your mind gains strength. Conversely, every time you face a difficult decision and execute it quickly, cleanly, and strategically, you erode the power of anxiety. You prove to yourself through action that you are the dominant force in your life, not your emotions. This doesn't mean acting rashly. It means eliminating procrastination once the analysis is complete. The gap between decision and execution must be minimized. To enforce this, implement the 7-minute rule for fear-driven tasks. If you are dreading a particular action, commit to working on it for exactly 7 minutes. Often, the inertia of starting is the biggest hurdle. Once the initial block is overcome, the energy of fear dissipates, replaced by the momentum of work. Maintaining the high-focus state. Sustaining this high-focus state requires continuous vigilance over your mental inputs and environment. The mind, when reeling from past failure, is highly susceptible to negative feedback loops. To maintain strategic focus, you must 1. Curate your information diet. Stop consuming news, social media, or engaging in conversations that amplify fear, scarcity, or generalized panic. Your time is a precious resource, and your mental state is your most powerful tool. Feed it only information that is factual, useful, and strategically relevant to your current rebuild phase. 2. Institutionalize review and correction. Anxiety often arises from a perceived loss of control. Reclaim control by scheduling frequent, methodical reviews of your progress and strategy. A weekly financial audit and strategy session, conducted with cold detachment, removes the space for generalized fear to operate. You replace vague worry with concrete data points and calculated adjustments. 3. Cultivate impassivity. True power resides not in the absence of emotion, but in the capacity to observe intense emotion without allowing it to dictate action. When fear flares up, note it, acknowledge its message, the data, and then consciously shift your consciousness to the next logical, strategic step. Your feelings are a compass, not a captain. You are the captain, and your focus is fixed on the horizon of your strategic objective. The phoenix rises through mastery of both material action and internal temperament. By actively transforming the intense energy of fear and anxiety into the fuel for accelerated action and rigorous focus, you are converting your greatest psychological liability into your most powerful engine of growth. You are becoming not just resilient, but imperturbable, a force that uses internal pressure to achieve external domination. Fear is a powerful surge of energy. Your rebirth depends on your willingness to channel it, not repress it. Interrogate your anxiety to extract the strategic data it holds. Then, with disciplined intensity, convert that energy into accelerated, focused action that drives your recovery. By minimizing the gap between decision and execution, you prove your sovereignty over your emotions and solidify your path to an unstoppable, strategically driven comeback. Let the heat of your anxiety now forge the discipline that makes you financially invincible. Chapter 7. Forging New Wealth Habits. building foundations from scratch. You have navigated the psychological depths of the collapse. You've harnessed the intensity of fear and converted it into strategic focus. Now, the work moves from internal transformation to external construction. Resurrection requires more than just an insightful mindset. It demands new systems, routines, and strategies, foundations built from scratch that are impervious to the vulnerabilities of the past. This phase is about the rigorous, patient, and uncompromising work of forging new wealth habits. The failure was ultimately a failure of system and discipline. The new success must be built upon a system of unshakable discipline and a commitment to methodical execution. Your focus shifts entirely from grand, abstract schemes to the meticulous, daily management of the smallest financial flows. You are no longer gambling. You are engineering. The power of granular control. The first step in forging new habits is to embrace granular control over your finances. Before the collapse, money flowed, often unseen and unmanaged, fueled by emotion or ego. Now, every single unit of currency must pass through a conscious checkpoint. You must institute a system of intentional friction around spending. The old system made spending easy. The new system makes spending hard, requiring conscious choice and verification against a strict, documented budget. This is not about deprivation. It is about establishing sovereignty over your resources. Every dollar is a soldier. You must command it, not let it wander. This granular control requires the creation of detailed, functional financial buckets. You are no longer operating with a single, porous checking account. You need segregated funds with clear, non-negotiable purposes. 1. Immediate necessity fund for absolute fixed living expenses. This is the fortress. 2. Strategic reinvestment fund, dedicated solely to the growth of your new income streams, training, tools, marketing. This is the engine. 3. Insulation reserve fund, a rapidly growing, separate pool for emergencies and mandatory reserves. This is the shield, and it is non-negotiable. The creation and rigid maintenance of these distinct buckets prevents the accidental erosion of critical capital and reinforces the new habit of intentional resource allocation. When you know exactly where every dollar belongs, you eliminate the mental and emotional ambiguity that leads to destructive spending. The habit of radical self-correction, a key vulnerability in the previous financial structure, was likely a resistance to uncomfortable truth and a lack of mechanisms for rapid self-correction. The new architecture must institutionalize the habit of auditing and immediate adjustment. Schedule a weekly financial reckoning. This is a non-negotiable ritual where you review all transactions, compare actual performance against your budget, and analyze every deviation. This is not a time for self-pity or judgment. It is a clinical review of the data. If a habit led to an overspend, the solution isn't to feel guilty, but to immediately implement a systemic correction, a hard boundary, a delayed purchase rule, or a necessary cut. This level of discipline transforms you from a passive participant in your financial life into an active operational commander. You are demonstrating an unwavering commitment to integrity, not just to others, but to yourself and to the data. This commitment is the fastest way to solidify your new wealth habits. Building capital through disciplined sacrifice recovery demands an intense, temporary period of disciplined sacrifice, a voluntary constriction that accelerates the accumulation of initial capital. You must ruthlessly differentiate between need and desire, placing the long-term goal of unshakable sovereignty far above any short-term comfort or external validation. This sacrifice is not permanent, but it is fierce. It is a calculated trade-off, trading the fleeting pleasures of present consumption for the massive, leveraged power of future financial independence. Every resource you conserve and strategically reinvest in this phase represents future leverage and resilience. This intense focus on accumulation must be viewed as a strategic mission, not a deprivation. This capital must be immediately put to work, adhering to the principles learned from the crisis. Reinvest in skill, not lifestyle. Focus capital expenditure on training, tools, or expert counsel that directly increases your income-generating capacity. Prioritize insulation. The first capital must go to the Insulation Reserve Fund. Building a formidable shield against economic shocks is the primary objective of the reborn financial structure. Avoid high-risk leverage. The previous system failed due to overestimation and excessive risk. The new system relies on steady, consistent, and highly mitigated growth. Institutionalizing resilience. The ultimate goal of these new habits is to institutionalize resilience. You are designing systems that operate effectively even when your emotional state is compromised. Your system must be stronger than your momentary impulse. This means automation of savings and reinvestment. Whatever your income streams, a set percentage must be automatically diverted to your strategic reinvestment and insulation funds the moment it is received, before it ever hits the main spending account. This removes the need for daily willpower. Delayed gratification as a strategy. Implement mandatory wait times for all non-essential purchases above a small, predetermined threshold. This cooling-off period is a protective mechanism that allows the analytical mind to override the impulsive one, reinforcing the strategic habit. The habit of documentation. Every single financial projection, strategy, and decision must be meticulously documented. This ensures that future decisions are based on measurable reality and past learning, not on hazy memory or optimistic guesswork. Forging new wealth habits is the arduous, day-to-day process of making your new, sovereign intentions manifest in the material world. It is the steady, quiet rhythm of discipline that creates unstoppable momentum. The true strength of the phoenix is not its dramatic rise, but the unseen, methodical preparation that makes that rise possible, and crucially, makes its subsequent position unassailable. Resurrection is built upon the disciplined, methodical execution of new systems. Embrace the rigor of granular financial control, institutionalize rapid self-correction through weekly audits, and engage in disciplined sacrifice to rapidly build your foundational capital. Your new wealth habits must prioritize insulation and strategic reinvestment over comfort and consumption. By forging a system that is stronger than your impulses, you build a foundation of resilience and discipline that ensures your comeback is not a temporary victory, but the launchpad for permanent, sovereign success. Chapter 8. Aligning money with purpose. Turning resources into tools for growth. You have meticulously cleared the wreckage, sharpened your focus, and forged disciplined new habits. You are accumulating capital again, one hard-won unit at a time. This accumulation, however, is not the ultimate goal. The true power of wealth is unlocked only when it is aligned with an undeniable, fiercely held purpose. Without this alignment, money remains a volatile, vulnerable substance. When aligned with intention, it transforms into an unstoppable tool for growth and sovereign influence. The old financial structure likely failed because the money was detached from your deepest sense of self. It might have been driven by external validation, by the pursuit of empty status, or by a generalized, unexamined desire for more. This lack of a core magnetic purpose meant that decisions were easily swayed by fear, ego, or impulse. The wealth you rebuild now must be different. It must serve a purpose so clear, so potent, and so deeply internalized that every financial decision becomes a direct extension of your personal mission. Money must be seen not as an end, but as controlled, directed energy used to fuel your specific vision of a powerful life. Defining your sovereign purpose, this alignment begins with a ruthless interrogation of your most profound goals. What is the unshakable core of your ambition? This cannot be a superficial aim. It must be a mission that transcends the mere acquisition of assets. Ask yourself, 1. What undeniable contribution must I make to the world? This is the external, measurable output of your power. 2. What specific form of freedom, time, intellectual, geographical, is non-negotiable for my highest performance? This defines the structural necessity of your wealth. 3. What quality of internal mastery do I seek to maintain, and how does wealth enable that focus? This links financial structure to psychological power. Your sovereign purpose is the synthesis of these answers. It might be the creation of a system that radically simplifies a complex industry, or the building of a shielded environment for a specific kind of intellectual work. Once this purpose is defined, it becomes the strategic filter for every resource allocation decision. The purpose-driven investment filter: every dollar you generate and every piece of capital you deploy must now pass through this purpose-driven investment filter. If an investment or expenditure does not directly serve your sovereign purpose, by increasing your capacity, accelerating your mission, or solidifying your foundational security, it is a distraction and must be eliminated. This filter introduces a strategic severity to your finances. Money is too potent a tool to be wasted on activities that do not advance your ultimate goals. This means investing in skills aligned with purpose. If your mission requires advanced technological knowledge, every available resource goes toward mastering that area. If it requires superior negotiation skills, you invest in that training. Funding protective structures. Wealth aligned with purpose includes funding the Insulation Reserve Fund. That reserve is not just for survival. It is to protect the continuity of your mission from external shocks. The money serves the purpose by shielding it, eliminating vanity spend. Spending for status or external applause is a fundamental misalignment. It feeds the ego, not the purpose. True power is quiet, focused, and directed inward toward the mission, not outward toward observers. Transforming recovery into a launch pad, the recovery phase itself must be viewed not as a detour, but as the initial launch pad for your purposeful wealth. The money you are earning now, however small, is the seed capital for your sovereign mission. This requires intentional direction of your resources. 1. Direct resource flow. Automate the allocation of income toward the most strategic areas of your purpose. For instance, a percentage of every dollar goes directly into the strategic reinvestment fund, earmarked for a specific mission-critical tool or training course. 2. Focus on exponential return. Seek opportunities where a small investment of current capital generates a massive, nonlinear return in competence or influence relevant to your purpose. This might be a niche certification or access to a highly specialized network. 3. Weigh opportunity against alignment. When a new revenue opportunity arises, the primary question is not, how much money does it generate? But, does this opportunity distract me from, or does it accelerate my defined sovereign purpose? A high-paying opportunity that pulls you off mission is a liability. A strategically aligned, modest opportunity is an investment in your future power. When you align money with purpose, you create a powerful feedback loop that generates both wealth and meaning. The pursuit of your purpose naturally generates revenue, and that revenue is then immediately and efficiently recycled back into the service of the purpose, amplifying your impact and solidifying your financial structure simultaneously. The financial collapse showed you the danger of a structure built on shifting sands. Now, you are building an architecture of wealth that is anchored to the most stable, unmoving force in your life, your unyielding intention and sovereign mission. This alignment transforms money from an object of anxiety into an obedient, powerful tool wielded with precision and mastery. The greatest power of wealth lies in its direction, not its quantity. Define your sovereign purpose with fierce clarity, and use it as the strategic filter for every financial decision. Transform your resources from abstract assets into focused tools for growth, ensuring every dollar accelerates your core mission and solidifies your resilience. By aligning money with an unyielding purpose, you move beyond mere recovery and establish an unstoppable trajectory toward true, sustainable abundance and sovereign influence. Chapter 9. Emotional Mastery Through Rebirth. Harnessing Passion and Resilience. You have successfully anchored your financial strategy to a clear, sovereign purpose. Now you must turn your attention back inward to perfect the ultimate tool of your resurrection, emotional mastery. The journey from collapse to power is intensely volatile, and it requires more than just smart systems. It demands an iron will and the ability to channel powerful internal forces, your passion and your resilience, into unwavering financial and mental stability. The failure of the past was often driven by uncontrolled emotion, impulsive risk, fear-driven retreat, or ego-fueled spending. True mastery lies not in eliminating passion, but in harnessing its intense energy and directing it with the cold, strategic hand of discipline. The phoenix rises through mastery of both emotion and strategy, the heat of your drive controlled by the structure of your systems. Controlling impulses. The gatekeeper of your wealth impulses are the greatest enemy of sustained financial power. They are the echoes of the old, vulnerable self, seeking instant gratification or momentary relief from discomfort. To achieve mastery, you must install an unbreachable gatekeeper between your emotional state and your financial decisions. This is a conscious practice of radical pause. When you feel a surge of intense emotion, whether it is the excitement of a seemingly perfect opportunity, the anxiety of a market dip, or the urge for a rewarding purchase, you must institutionalize a mandatory cooling-off period. This pause allows your higher, analytical mind to engage before the impulsive brain takes action. Practice the 3-day rule for decisions. Commit to never making a significant financial move within 72 hours of a major emotional event, whether positive or negative. This separation ensures that your capital deployment is based on methodical due diligence, not emotional volatility. Your emotions can inform your motivation, but they must never dictate your execution. Furthermore, you must identify your personal impulse triggers. What specific situations, environments, or interactions historically led you to make poor financial choices? Is it comparing yourself to a peer? Is it the thrill of a high-pressure sales environment? Once identified, these triggers must be avoided or, if unavoidable, met with a pre-programmed, disciplined response. This is the self-knowledge that leads to true, practical mastery. Harnessing passion for sustained drive. Your innate passion, that fierce, unyielding drive for success and control, is not a liability. It is a limitless energy source. The key is to redirect its intensity away from reckless action and toward sustained, methodical effort. Passion, when channeled, manifests as unrelenting focus. It is the force that allows you to work longer, study harder, and push through obstacles that would cause others to quit. Use the intense memory of your collapse, that burning desire never to be powerless again, to fuel your daily routine. That powerful emotional intensity must be converted into 1. Meticulous execution, applying intense focus to the mundane but necessary details of your budget, tracking, and system maintenance. 2. Strategic endurance, maintaining your recovery plan across months and years, resisting the temptation to revert to shortcuts or quick fixes. 3. Intellectual depth, passionately pursuing mastery in your niche, making yourself so competent that your expertise becomes its own powerful asset. Your passion should be the internal engine, but discipline must be the transmission. The engine provides the heat. The transmission directs the force smoothly and efficiently toward the strategic goal. Cultivating mental and financial resilience. Resilience is not merely bouncing back. It is the capacity to maintain performance and stability in the face of uncertainty. The market is inherently volatile, and your rebuilding journey will contain setbacks. Emotional mastery ensures these setbacks do not become catastrophic failures. To cultivate unshakable resilience, you must Normalize setbacks as data. When a plan fails or a market shifts, resist the urge to personalize the event. View it not as a personal failure but as an operational data point. What is the system telling you? What is the market revealing? This detached, analytical approach prevents emotional collapse and facilitates rapid strategic adjustment. Strengthen the insulation reserve. Your financial resilience is inextricably linked to your emotional resilience. Knowing that you have a non-negotiable, well-funded insulation reserve provides a profound psychological shield. This reserve gives you the time and clarity to make strategic decisions during a crisis, rather than panic-driven ones. The stronger the reserve, the calmer the mind. Embrace the long view. Maintain a powerful, internalized focus on your 10-year, purpose-driven vision. When temporary setbacks occur, measure them against that massive, long-term goal. A small financial loss in the present becomes strategically insignificant when viewed through the lens of your ultimate, sovereign ambition. This perspective diffuses the immediate emotional sting. Emotional mastery is the continuous process of internal calibration, ensuring that your powerful inner forces serve your strategic goals, rather than sabotage them. It is the final, unassailable layer of security you build around your financial resurrection. By controlling your impulses and directing your passion toward disciplined execution, you transform internal turbulence into external, unwavering strength. True power is demonstrated not by the absence of passion, but by its precise, disciplined application. Harness the fierce energy of your passion and the grit of your resilience, directing them away from impulsive risk and toward methodical, sustained execution. By institutionalizing the radical pause and viewing setbacks as strategic data, you cultivate the emotional mastery that ensures stability, maintains focus, and transforms internal volatility into an external, unshakable force. Your will is the commander. Your emotions are the fuel. Control the fuel and your trajectory is unstoppable. Chapter 10. The Alchemy of Financial Resurrection. Turning setbacks into sustainable success. You have mastered the internal landscape, controlling impulses, directing passion, and anchoring your wealth to purpose. Now, you stand ready to execute the alchemy of financial resurrection. The strategic process of converting the insights gained from failure into sustained, scalable, and unshakable success. This is where abstract wisdom becomes material wealth, through a rigorous application of discipline, calculated risk, and precise execution. The previous collapse was an exposure of vulnerability. Your next venture must be an exhibition of impervious structural integrity. The goal is not merely to recover the lost ground, but to build an architecture of wealth that is fundamentally superior to the one that failed, designed to thrive in volatility. The strategic conversion of failure alchemy, in its purest sense, is transformation, turning base metal into gold. Your financial alchemy is turning the base, painful data of your setbacks into the pure, valuable gold of proprietary strategic insight. You must now codify the lessons learned from the collapse into a set of non-negotiable operating principles for your new financial life and any new ventures. These principles are your internal constitution, forged in the fire of loss. Examples might include: principle of multi-layered insulation. Never rely on a single financial shield. Mandate a separation between operational capital, personal reserves, and long-term investment, ensuring that a shock to one layer does not compromise the others. Principle of negative contingency. Before deploying any capital, rigorously model the catastrophic downside scenario. Only proceed if the strategic setback of the worst-case scenario is survivable, without compromising the core mission or the insulation reserve. Principle of systemic transparency. Eliminate all black box decisions. Every investment, expense, or income stream must be fully documented and transparent, reviewable at a moment's notice, to prevent the insidious creep of unaccountable error that characterized the past. By operating strictly under these self-imposed, hard-won principles, you are using your past failure as a continuous, preventative strategic advantage. You avoid the blind spots that will ultimately claim those who have not endured such a profound reckoning. The role of calculated risk, a core element of resurrection, is the understanding and deployment of calculated risk. The old failure may have stemmed from reckless risk taken based on hope, ego, or incomplete data. Sustainable success requires risk taken based on strategic intelligence and a thorough understanding of mitigation. You are now in a position of low-stakes experimentation, informed by high-stakes experience. Your current capital is precious, but your understanding of financial loss is supreme. Therefore, any risk must be 1. Small and controlled. Risk only a small, predetermined percentage of your strategic reinvestment fund, never your insulation reserve. The loss must be survivable without psychological or financial distress. 2. Information seeking. The purpose of the risk must be to gain crucial market information or validate a business hypothesis, not solely to achieve a massive return. You are paying for accelerated, real-world data. 3. Scalable and replicable. Focus on ventures that, if successful on a small scale, can be systematically scaled up using systems and processes you fully control. Avoid one-off, lottery ticket ventures. The sovereign individual does not eliminate risk. They master the management and mitigation of risk. You use the intense memory of your failure to ensure that every strategic move is made with eyes wide open to the potential cost, allowing you to move with a certainty that those operating in fear or blind optimism cannot match. Creating sustainable success through disciplined true financial resurrection culminates in sustainable success, a system that produces wealth reliably, without the need for constant, high-wire acts of personal effort. This sustainability is achieved through institutionalizing discipline. This means focusing your energy on building durable, system-dependent income streams, rather than relying on ephemeral, personal effort-dependent transactions. Your goal is to create financial mechanisms that operate on predictable processes, leveraging your strategic insight and hard-won resilience. Focus on building systems that compound value, create assets or expertise that become more valuable over time without continuous linear input from you, e.g., intellectual property, automated sales funnels, high-value consulting niches. Automate compliance. Use technology to enforce your financial discipline, automatic transfers to reserves, automated tracking, automated invoicing. Your system should make it easier to be disciplined than to be chaotic. Decouple income from time. Seek revenue models that compensate you for your unique insight and strategic value, rather than simply trading hours for dollars. Your experience from the collapse is a unique value proposition. Monetize the wisdom, not the clock. This commitment to systemic, sustainable success transforms your recovery into a launchpad for enduring influence. You become a force of nature, predictable in your discipline but formidable in your strategic execution. The chaos of your past is now the fertile ground for an ordered, powerful, and lasting financial future. The alchemy of financial resurrection is the strategic conversion of failure data into a set of unshakable operating principles. By institutionalizing discipline and applying calculated risk to acquire information, you move beyond mere survival into the realm of sustainable, scalable success. Embrace the process of codifying your painful past into powerful strategic principles, and wield your hard-won insight to build an architecture of wealth that is resilient, predictable, and fundamentally superior to the one that was consumed by the fire. The true test of your rebirth is the durability of the system you build now. Chapter 11. Shadows Integrated. Embracing both weakness and strength. You have executed the strategic and emotional components of your resurrection, forging new systems and operationalizing your hard-won wisdom. Yet, one profound act of mastery remains: the integration of the shadows. This is the recognition that true, sustainable power does not come from denying or forgetting your past failures and vulnerabilities, but from fully accepting and integrating them, turning every past mistake into a potent lesson that fuels confident, intentional action. Integration means accepting your entire financial journey, failures and triumphs alike, as a single, continuous narrative of power and learning. The failure was not an anomaly. It was a brutal, necessary education. To deny the weakness that led to the collapse is to leave a vulnerability in your current structure, as if sealing a crack with a layer of paint instead of structural steel. You must look into the shadow and bring its lessons into the light of your present strategy. The power of full acceptance. The path to integration requires full, non-judgmental acceptance of the self who failed. This is not self-pity. It is strategic realism. You must accept that the person who made those critical errors was a part of your journey, and that person possessed both ambition, a strength, and certain blind spots, a weakness. Integration is the active refusal to allow past shame to dictate future actions. Shame is paralyzing. Acceptance is liberating. When you accept the failure as a source of data, you strip the event of its emotional power and gain control over its strategic value. Every time a memory of the collapse surfaces, the fear, the shame, the specific misstep, you must consciously reframe it. This is a past event that provided me with a non-negotiable principle for my current success. Your failures are not proof of inadequacy. They are proof that you played the game fiercely, and in doing so acquired unique, battle-tested expertise. The strength you possess now is a direct result of the pressure you withstood. To reject the failure is to reject the origin of your current resilience. Transforming weakness into systemic strength, the most powerful act of integration, is to convert the recognition of your past weaknesses into the foundation of your present systemic strength. You know your fatal flaws better than any external advisor. Your strategy must be built to neutralize those very flaws. If your weakness was impulse, your strength must be automated friction. You systemize mandatory delays, double checks, and independent third-party reviews for all high-value decisions. If your weakness was avoidance of detail, your strength must be institutionalized transparency and audit. You hire or automate rigorous tracking and reporting, making it impossible for a detail to be overlooked. If your weakness was dependency on ego-driven risk, your strength must be a mandate for mitigation. You refuse any opportunity, no matter how lucrative, that does not have clear, multi-layered downside protection built into the structure. This is the ultimate form of self-mastery, recognizing that you are fallible, and then building an external structure so robust that it is invulnerable to your internal fallibility. You integrate the shadow by making its lessons the very rules of your new financial game. Wielding the unflinching perspective integration gives you a rare and potent competitive tool, the unflinching perspective. You operate without the optimism bias that plagues most successful people. Those who have not faced true catastrophe often suffer from a subtle but dangerous belief in their own invincibility. They believe the good times will continue and their cushion will hold. You know better. You have the wisdom of the survivor. You understand that systems fail, that crises emerge, and that the only reliable variable is your capacity to maintain discipline and reserves. This perspective allows you to make hard, pragmatic decisions that others avoid, cutting costs early, building excessive reserves, and insisting on comprehensive contingency planning. This refusal to indulge in comfortable delusion is not pessimism. It is radical realism. It is the integration of the shadow, the memory of how quickly everything can dissolve. That keeps your systems tight, your focus sharp, and your commitment to reserves absolute. The sovereign narrative. Finally, integration culminates in the mastery of your sovereign narrative. You are no longer defined by the collapse. You are defined by the fierce, intentional process of your resurrection. Your narrative acknowledges the struggle, but emphasizes the strength, wisdom, and strategic superiority that arose from it. You own your story completely, without defensiveness or apology. This complete ownership of your past, your present system, and your future potential is the ultimate expression of sovereignty. You have faced the ultimate exposure and survived. You have learned the hidden rules of money and power by paying the highest tuition. Now you stand before the world as a figure of integrated power, one who is both intensely human and supremely strategic, capable of building enduring success, because you understand the exact conditions that lead to collapse. Integration means embracing the entirety of your financial journey, turning past mistakes into the foundational, non-negotiable principles of your future success. Do not reject the self who failed, but transform that failure into the unique source of your superior insight and discipline. By converting weakness into systemic strength and adopting the unflinching perspective of the survivor, you wield an integrated power that is resilient against both external volatility and internal fallibility. Your past is not a burden. It is the unique, potent blueprint for your unstoppable future. Chapter 12. Sovereign Rebirth. Living with mastery, power, and freedom. You have completed the full cycle of transformation. You descended into the depths of reckoning, embraced the strategic wisdom of the collapse, meticulously rebuilt your financial structure, and integrated the lessons of your shadows. You now stand at the final stage of the journey, sovereign rebirth. This chapter is the culmination, the realization of a life lived with complete mastery over money, personal power, and intentional choice. You have risen from the ashes, not merely recovered, but fundamentally transformed into a force that is resilient, decisive, and fully autonomous. You are not just financially successful. You are sovereign, in control of your resources, your destiny, and your inner world. The signature of mastery sovereign rebirth is defined by a shift from the relentless intensity of the rebuild to the calm, unwavering certainty of maintenance and expansion. The signature of your new mastery is no longer the struggle, but the smooth, efficient operation of your systems. You no longer manage crises. You manage growth, because your insulated financial architecture prevents predictable failure. You operate from a position of proactive control, where every major financial decision is a calculated, well-mitigated move, rooted in your purpose-driven investment filter. Mastery is evidenced by the absence of financial drama. The old cycle of manic hope and crippling fear has been replaced by the steady, rhythmic drumbeat of disciplined execution. You have achieved an almost imperturbable stability, a quiet confidence born from knowing that your reserves are secure, your systems are strong, and your capacity to generate wealth is independent of external circumstances. Wielding unstoppable wealth and influence, the wealth you generate now is intrinsically different from the wealth of the past. It is clean, purposeful, and free from the corrosive weight of ego or external validation. You wield this wealth not for status, but as a tool for sovereign influence, directing resources precisely where they accelerate your mission and create lasting value. Unstoppable wealth is characterized by three qualities. 1. Non-dependency. Your wealth allows you to operate without being dependent on clients, markets, or external approval that compromises your integrity or your strategic vision. It buys you the ultimate leverage, the power to say no. 2. Generative power. Your capital is actively engaged in self-sustaining and compounding growth, creating value that extends beyond your immediate involvement. Money is working as a loyal, efficient servant of your purpose. 3. Shielded security. Your insulation reserve is robust enough to weather multi-year economic turbulence, ensuring that your core mission and personal integrity can never be jeopardized by external financial shocks. This power is wielded with a new level of intentionality. You use your resources to solve problems, not to mask vulnerabilities. You invest in structures that promote freedom and resilience, recognizing that true influence comes from a position of profound self-control. Living with unfettered freedom, the final, most profound reward of this resurrection is unfettered freedom. This freedom is not merely the absence of debt. It is the freedom from financial anxiety, and the knowledge that your destiny is entirely in your hands. Your hard-won discipline has liberated you, because you have mastered the internal world of impulse and fear, and mastered the external world of strategy and systems. Your choices are no longer constrained by financial necessity. You choose how to spend your time, who to work with, and what risks to take, based purely on sovereign alignment with your purpose. This is the ultimate reversal of the bankruptcy experience, where once the external world imposed limitations on your choices, now your internal discipline creates limitless possibility. You have earned the right to live without the chains of financial fear or the drag of poor habits. The journey culminates in this powerful realization. The collapse was not a punishment, but a mandatory crucible that stripped away the unsustainable and forged the invincible. The vulnerability that led to ruin has been permanently replaced by a deep, embodied wisdom and an unshakable system of control. You are the master architect of your life, operating from a position of strategic depth that only a survivor can truly possess. Live now with that mastery, with the serene confidence of one who knows the darkness and who has built a structure designed to endure the light. Your rebirth is complete, and your sovereignty is absolute. You have risen, financially, emotionally, and strategically, fully sovereign, resilient, and empowered. The culmination of this journey is living with complete mastery over your resources, wielding unstoppable influence aligned with your deepest purpose, and enjoying a freedom born of radical self-control. Embrace this sovereign rebirth. Your new structure is built on a foundation of unshakable wisdom, ensuring that the power and wealth you create now are not temporary gains, but the enduring legacy of an unstoppable will.